technology is really a continuation of the evolutionary process. We're going to merge with our technology, and we're getting closer and closer to our technology.
No one could tell us why we couldn't get pregnant. After 3 years of tests and procedures, we half-heartedly go to an informational session about IVF. 2 days later, I'm injecting my wife's stomach with hormones and fertility drugs. We do everything on schedule and make sure all the shots are given. We go in for the egg retrieval, the sperm collection, and then, finally, the embryo transfer. Based on a blood test taken a couple weeks later, the doctor gives us the news. My wife is pregnant. We go in for what will be our last trip to the reproductive endocrinologist. Upon examination, he confirms that my wife is pregnant, but we're having triplets. He has to stop the examination because my wife is laughing too hard. I wake up in the middle of the night in a sweat. Did we just take what was supposed to be the most basic and natural human function, and did we just erase that? What just happened?
So by 2029, we'll have computers that are as powerful as human intelligence, and we're going to use them to expand our own intelligence. They will go inside our brains through the capillaries, non-invasively, interact with our biological neurons, and expand our memories, make us think faster. It's really being able to reprogram this outdated software we have running in our bodies. We have literally software. Our genes are little software programs, and they evolved a long time ago, thousands of years ago, when conditions are very different. Our biological brains don't change that much. Yes, biological evolution continues to move, but technological evolution is 1,000,000 times faster. So for all practical purposes, biological evolution has stopped.
Okay, you got it on. Okay, let's even be more precise on when did you notice any loss in vision, or need the only realization I had of any loss of vision initially was at nighttime. I didn't see twinkling stars, and other people did, and I wondered why. And so I just said, well, some people see twinkling stars and others don't, so what's the problem? You know, why worry about that one? And then when I was in medical school, I was using high-resolution microscopes. And so I found that I couldn't really ascertain what I was looking at. So I got into a confrontation sort of with the professor over the issue. He said, well, then you're going to have to go see the ophthalmologist, and I go here. So we looked at it, and he said, well, you got something definitely wrong with your eyes, because it appears that you're abnormal retina. And I've had another patient with a similar-looking type retina that you have, and that individual lost his sight. So I came to the hard realization that my visual impairment was interfering with my aspirations of the future. I've been doing law for more than 26 years, currently on my 27th year. What I have experienced in this clinical trial is an emotion to make it work. I'm getting very involved in it. I just love to work with it. The pathway of science in success of science solving a problem, medical problem. I just see that as a beautiful experience of life, at least for me.
My view about the nature of technology is fairly radical because I believe that technology started at the Big Bang, that its roots go all the way back to the Big Bang.
Technology is taking lessons from the natural world and then using them to control the world and to reverse the way things operate. Not just how does it work, but how can we change the world using those ideas.
Technology is a tool for liberating human expression, human creativity, human genius, human dignity. I believe to find the fullest power of your talents does require technology. Imagine Beethoven being born at that time, before there was all the instruments of music. I would say we have a moral obligation to increase the technology in the world because the technology is a system for allowing the 6 billion people on Earth and the more to come to have a possible chance at finding that and expressing that combination of gifts that they were born with.
So of course I see technology as a force, but I think that human reflection on and deciding about the way in which we want to use technology is also a force.
When they ask me a question like, what do you do on Fort Huachuca, or what do you do in the Army? And I tell them, I work with UAVs, and they're just fascinated. They're like, that's the remote control planes, right? And, that's correct. Here at the Flight Simulator Center, we prepare the students to fly the actual aircraft. As you can imagine, the cost of an aircraft would be a little bit much to lose due to inexperience. We have a variety of students. We have some that are coming in that have absolutely no knowledge whatsoever of the aviation world, and they're fresh out of high school. We get people that come in that say, I don't like computers, or I've never had to mess with computers before. And so actually some of them are getting a first taste of operating computers right here in the Sim Center.
Sometimes, I'll wake up and I just think about, flying. It's not necessarily a UAV or anything, but, I'll be flying an aircraft just because that's what my mind is wrapped around all day, every day of the week. Whenever you're that involved all the time, you dream about it.
Shadow is point and click. You have a trackball and a map display, and you just click on the map where you want the aircraft to go. Once you know the system and can fly it, and you're on your own and you're actually flying out there supporting, everything starts coming naturally. Your hands start to move where they need to go, and you're looking and doing a proper, you're doing your scan and checking all your instruments without you even realizing it.
Soon after the doctor told us we were having triplets, he advised us to speak with the resident geneticist to both understand the risks involved and to consider selective reduction. We never make the appointment. It's a difficult pregnancy, and after 29.5 weeks, our doctor tells us we need to deliver because one of the babies, baby C, can't grow enough. The truth is, the human body just isn't designed to carry multiple babies to term. I wait in the hallway outside the delivery room, counting the people going in. I lose track after 35. Inside, it's like mission control. No soft music, no scented candles, no pool of warm water for the baby. Just teams of medical professionals and lots of machines. And then they show me baby A, baby B, baby C.
I think probably the best general definition of technology is as a kind of general means to some desired end. So the question is, if technology is just kind of a collection of tools or objects or processes, what's the problem? What's the issue with it? And this gets to one of the central issues about technology, is whether it really is neutral, whether it's simply a question of, is it being used improperly, or is there something about the technology that causes specific problems? And I think when you look at the history of the philosophy of technology, you find a pretty strong agreement that technology is not neutral. People tend to think of technology criticism as a relatively recent phenomenon because we've only recently developed high technology, but it's been a concern really since the beginning of civilization. So the Bible has kind of a ambiguous status when it comes to technology. There's the whole notion that God gave man dominion over nature and that he has some right to manipulate it with his tools. God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden and gave him a direction to till and keep it, so to use the tools in nature. There's this notion that humans are made in the image of God, and God is a creator. He's a maker. So people have said we should be like God. We should be creators and makers. And finally, we should note that Jesus himself was a technician. Jesus was a carpenter. So he was a maker and a builder. On the other hand, there are a number of warnings and cautions about technology and its power to disrupt society. The Apple
And the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden is thought to represent both moral and practical knowledge how to do things. So this was seen as a dangerous thing. The first act of sin committed by Adam and Eve was a technical act. They sewed garments for themselves. So we see a kind of a connection between technology and sin. Cain, who was the murderous son of Adam and Eve, his main mission in life was to build. He built cities. And so again, we see a kind of notion of the connection between corruption and building things. The most notable negative technological accomplishment of the Old Testament was the Tower of Babel. And of course, this was a great catastrophe for humanity, and right, God punished humans for their hubris in building this tower that reached to the sky. So.
I don't think this is the first time that people have asked themselves hard questions about the nature of being a person. But I think that this technology puts these questions into everyday life in a way that's kind of unique.
So long as human nature remains what it is, people will continue to fool around with technology. Will there be any fundamental change in human happiness or the meaning of human life? There never has been before, and I doubt I have no reason to suspect there will be in the future. On the other hand, people will become wealthier. Levels of wealth will rise. People will become more passive as more and more things are done for them by machines.
It's like there's this little engine of novelty that started to go haywire, generating, solutions, but also new conditions and new situations, and just the speed and the ferociousness of this transformation is itself becoming increasingly a factor in people's lives.
I very much want to move back to the kind of humble discipline of science, which is that we are just in this little tiny island surrounded by deep mystery, and we're just like tentatively sticking a toe in the sea of mystery over here and seeing if we can put down another pier, and it might last for a while or it might be knocked down. And there's the sort of humility of trying to understand reality and recognizing that we don't.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. There's technology that does things for us, and there's always been the aspect of technology that does things to us.
For the first several months of their lives, the babies pretty much live inside and alongside their machines. They help them breathe, they help them eat, they make sure the light and the temperature is right. And although it all seems foreign and difficult, I try hard to get down to their level and see life from their perspective as much as I can. I know that without all this help, they wouldn't be alive. Back at home, it's still just my wife and I, the two of us waiting. She tells me that she prays to God every night and asks me to do the same. I thank God we're programmed to survive.
The right eye was implanted by way of a surgical procedure, which took approximately 3.5 to 4 hours. General anesthetic was used, and the eye is really removed from the eye socket. Then the eye is surgically implanted with the implant. And what is amazing, you don't feel it at all. There's no sensory nerves inside your eye. There's no pain, no discomfort, and there's no adversity whatsoever. An electrode, to be effective, has to be close enough to the neural tissue to cause a stimulation to that neural tissue that you will see in your brain, a flash or a star. I like to use the word star because people ask me, what do you see? I see stars. That was a bit of a revelation because you have to understand I hadn't seen anything for approximately 18 years.
It's true that a new technology will limit some choices while it's expanding choices in another place.
Well, you have an example even like automobiles, which automobiles in the very beginning of the 20th century were a curiosity, kind of toy for the wealthy to go into the country in the weekends. Of course, as automobiles gradually became more widespread, we structured our cities around the use of the cars. And as cities progressed and developed under the assumption that most of the people did have automobiles, then the few who didn't were compelled to use them.
Technologies kind of carry with them certain habits, certain possibilities that are more or less likely to become realized. Anybody who has a cell phone or a BlackBerry or a communicating PDA knows that getting involved in that device means that you are more and more regularly and compulsively going to be communicating with the network. It's just a reality of those devices.
Yeah, if we go very narrow, we can say you lose choices here, and there is a sense in which you have to have something, but you don't really actually have to have it. You just say, we have to have it if I want all these other choices. Very obviously, the automobile has increased our choices and our destinations about where we can go. Because for most people, for most of the world, for most of their lives, they hardly got out of their little valley. And if you couldn't walk, you couldn't get there, and you could only go so far with walking. I think that most people weigh those expanding choices and limited choices, and they go with the technology, because in the end, in total, they have more choices. People aren't dumb.
I deployed with this system in 2004 to Iraq, and the best thing I could say about it is it really works as advertised. The whole point behind an unmanned aircraft vehicle is it's unmanned, so if you have to go somewhere that's inherently dangerous and look for something, it's better to send an unmanned vehicle than a helicopter. So that's one of the features that we have. And then of course we can provide all sorts of information to a commander, whether it's video or whether it's the capability to put munitions on a target. We can do all that.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch.
When I was in Baghdad, I was being supported by a UAV, although it was a smaller system. However, it was a very notable effect, the difference of intelligence that we got in real time versus, we would have sometimes intelligence reports that would be maybe a little outdated or maybe, maybe not really time effective.
Probably the neatest thing I ever saw was watching the troops move in, and they're stacking up, getting ready to go into a house. And we saw 2 people run out the back door, and we were able to talk directly to those guys and say, hey, a guy in a blue shirt and a guy in a red shirt just ran out the back, and they're 2 houses down, 3 o'clock at your position, about 400 meters. Yeah, that's the house right there. And so we were able to direct them right onto the people they were looking for.
1048.
I would always tell myself, just imagine you're the guy in that Humvee driving on that road. What would you want to know from a UAV that's watching you?
We tell that to the soldiers here when they're struggling with, with their schoolwork or learning how to operate it. We're like, well, what you're doing here is important. Every commander in Iraq wants more of them, and that's what we're here to do, is provide them with more.
After 2 months in the NICU, 2 of the babies, Zach and Maxine, come home with us. Kuba, however, has to remain. One of us, as well as other family members, visit every day so he isn't alone. But to manage all the emotional and physical logistics of having 3 babies in 2 different places, I require both a detachment and an intense attachment. When I'm there with him, I sing songs and tell him stories about going for walks to the park, to the beach, describing what we see. When I'm away, I tell myself that he's programmed to survive. But it's hard not to think of him alone in there at night. A little machine living inside a machine.
Modern science certainly treats a human being as a machine. It's a machine made up of molecules that interact under laws of chemistry and physics. If we are machines, then our consciousness, our mind, our love for each other emerges from those mechanical properties. So it seems to me that in principle, a device could be built out of other material with similar emergent properties. People feel very uncomfortable about that. The robots that we're starting to build today are different from all other machines in the past in that they have some intents and some desires. Now, we as humans are used to dealing with others that are not humans with intents and desires. Dogs are perhaps the best example. We've probably bred the dogs and the cats to have the right characteristics, and we will breed our robots to have the right characteristics for us to feel comfortable with them. But they will be different from the machines we've had previously in having some sort of ongoing inner life.
Sometimes I think that artificial intelligence and computation are evocative objects in the sense that they are objects that cause us to reflect on the human, because after all, they have psychologies, almost. They're smart, almost. They're interactive and reactive in ways that make us think about questions such as, what does it mean to be human? What's special about being a human? What does it mean to be in a relationship?
Artificial intelligence is a field that has to do with philosophy of mind. And although it hasn't led to breakthroughs in the simulation of human thought on computers, it has led to fascinating philosophical debates. It's helped to clarify our thinking.
I took my daughter to the Darwin exhibit. She was 14, so it was 2 years ago. And they brought up these 2 Galapagos turtles, which are sitting there outside the exhibit. And my daughter says, for all the turtles are doing, they should have used robots. And since, the line was very slow, I started to ask the kids around whether they thought it was important that the turtles be alive. And the kids basically thought no. That since the turtles were just there to be on display anyway, a robot performing as a turtle would have been just as good. And there's the parents, are filled by saying, they're filled with comments like, but the whole point is they're real, And then I went back to the museum because this so fascinated me, and I began to ask people, if you brought up robots and substituted them for the turtles, do you think you'd need to tell people that they were robots, not turtles? And the kids say, basically no. That information about aliveness is on a kind of need-to-know basis.
Alan Turing was the greatest of our computer scientists. He was the most inventive, the most important.
The Turing test, of course, is a test whereby a machine can conduct an intelligent and human-like conversation to the point where a person cannot tell if they're conversing with a machine or with another human being.
He describes a parlor game in which a human judge interviews both a machine and a human foil. And the judge can't see which is which, communicates with them over basically teletype lines, kind of like instant messaging. If after those interviews the judge is unable to tell which is the human and which is the machine, then we say the machine has successfully impersonated a human and therefore has passed the Turing test. And I've been consistent that 2029 is a date where we will have non-biological intelligence, computer intelligence, that is indistinguishable from human intelligence.
The question is what that will mean.
Computers have been seductive from the very beginning because they offer the promise of perfection. If you do it right, it will do it right, and right away. And for some people, that is such a heady thought that they can somehow be involved in something that will be perfect and will make them feel more perfect.
The primary application of this is not some alien invasion of intelligent machines to compete with us. It's really going to be technology that we use to extend our own horizons, to make ourselves smarter. And that's actually what we've always used technology for.
There are many people who sense or who have the idea that technologists are not really driving the car, are not in control of this revolution. They could be, you know, the steering wheel and the brakes and the accelerator are still there, but technologists are joyriding because that's the cultural environment in which we live.
I think people often get upset at technologists, people building robots, that they're somehow encroaching on human values. And I really see that as much the same as Darwin encroaching on human values or Galileo encroaching on human values. As we understand the universe better and better, we become less special, and it really, really hurts us, and we resort to emotional arguments.
People are just, I think, naturally scared of change, and they can't imagine just leaping to that world from 40 years from now, because it seems so different. But fortunately, we're not going to leap in one big leap to the world 40 years from now. We're going to get there in 1,000 little steps. In each step, it's fairly modest and conservative. It's market tested.
We see the results of these surveys that indicate a majority of people in North America consider themselves technological pessimists. And we can say, well, look, there's this cosmic process of evolution, and it's sweeping over us, and it threatens to undermine our autonomy, our dignity, our freedom, and maybe it is inevitable. Maybe it's part of a universal evolutionary process, but in our time, right now, we can resist it.
The FBI has arrested a man in Lincoln, Montana.
With all the evidence found in Kaczynski's cabin.
This guy has to be the Unabomber.
17 years, Ted plotted, acted out the most complicated schemes.
Dear Mr. or Ms. Weider, thank you for your letter postmarked October 2nd. You ask whether it would be possible to include my voice in your film project. I assume you mean you would like to interview me face-to-face and film me or at least record my voice. You end your letter with the question, what are the costs of trying to make a machine that would pass the Turing test? I'm much more worried about the costs of having a machine that would pass the Turing test. The cost of having super intelligent machines will be, quite simply, the end of the human race.
Right, I've been receiving letters from Ted since November of 2003. And periodically he would inform me of different media groups or organizations that were trying to interview him or to discuss the problem of technology. So I guess it was about 2 years ago that he mentioned your name and said there was a possibility of doing a filming or a filmed interview of him and a discussion of his ideas. And Ted suggested that I contact you to see if there could be some way that I could support that, have some involvement in it, or to express some of the problems with technology as I saw it.
Another month goes by and Kuba rejoins his brother and sister at home with us. But now the coordination needed to manage triplets is staggering. We hire a special baby nurse to help us, and in order to keep track of everything, We create spreadsheets to record all the bottles, the diapers, the fluid ounces, the dry pounds, the input, the output. But it turns out we have an even bigger issue than keeping up with the schedule. When a child is born prematurely, it's not just that he or she is small and underweight. It's that systemically, they're not fully developed. Their digestive system, their immune system, their lungs, their heart, their brain. Being born 10.5 weeks early, our children are considered at risk. And beyond being delayed developmentally, we're cautioned to limit their exposure to any germs or viruses, lest they end up back in the hospital with serious respiratory ailments. So we implement a series of cleanliness protocols, move to a house outside the city, and shut ourselves in for the winter.
I learned about the Argus in dealing with Dr. Jackie Duncan, the ophthalmologist. One day she called me up and she goes, Dean, I've got this opportunity for you. We don't have a lot of experience, but it's designed to help you. That's all we know.
2 years ago, we started what we call the feasibility clinical trial. And in USA, we were approved by FDA to conduct to implant 10 subjects. The results vary from subjects to subjects, as in any of these neurostimulation products.
Had to qualify for it, you had to be 50 years old or more. And I fit that qualification. I had to have a very low ERG, that's electroretinogram. Initially, when I had it implanted, I was just a bit disappointed. I thought I would see images, and I was not really happy as I could be in that I didn't see the images like I used to see. Somehow I thought in my mind that I would see it like I used to. And what I found, I had new vision. For example, when I cross a boundary from a dark area to a light area, there would be a flash, like a light bulb going off in your brain. And you knew you were moving your head from a left to right, from a dark area to a light area. And initially, we had to move our head back and forth, left to right, which is sort of like a chicken. Chicken's eyes don't move. And so they would always tell me when I came into the laboratory, Dean, you gotta learn how to do your chicken movement. Well, I said, this is getting to be a bit much. I'm getting a sore neck from all this sort of activity.
Young kids that come in, definitely a lot of them think they're going to be more hands-on with flying. You know, I think they envision a yoke and a rudder right in here in the shelter, and so they're going to be doing, you know, some actual flying. And most of them do have some flight simulator experience on their Mac.
It's similar, like I said, to flying a manned aircraft, but a lot of it has to be computer controlled just because there's so much that needs to be monitored, kept track of, and as humans, we can only do so much.
These UAVs do currently have the ability for autonomous flight. We can pre-program a mission with waypoints, checkpoints for the aircraft to fly through, and we can basically let it go. We have to have someone there to monitor to make sure that everything's going correctly.
My personal opinion on the qualifications for an air vehicle operator is that pretty much anyone can do it. The question for us is how long will it take for us to train them to do this job, because we've been given an allotted time to do so. And if they can't meet the task minimums, the standard minimums by the time they live here, then we feel that they might not be qualified. Many times they have to be recycled.
Sitting in this shelter for 12 hours can sometimes be difficult. You just get kind of stir crazy sitting in here. We did 12-hour shifts, so we'd come in at 1 o'clock in the morning and we go to 1300, go to the gym, take a shower, and then you come back in at 1 in the morning. You do the same thing and you're still on the same mission. And it's definitely a high-stress situation. You know, you're gonna have a lot of people calling you, you're gonna have a lot of people asking you what's going on. You see friendly troops, you see other American soldiers taking fire. And so you need to be able to calmly and rationally almost, be treated like you're detached from that situation and be able to step back and say, hey, you got troops that are behind you. You got enemies coming up behind you. That does become like science fiction then. And this isn't a video game. What troops in Iraq and Afghanistan are doing now, it's not a game to them by any stretch of the imagination. It's not just science fiction, it's very real. And so I think the more human involvement you have, the better, to make sure that you're not becoming too detached.
No one is getting enough sleep, and without sleep, I begin to get depressed. I feel like my wife and we've become captives to our own creations. In the wee hours of the morning, I feel like I'm nothing more than a baby care machine, programmed to serve.
Kaczynski's approach to the problem of technology is rather unique. He places extremely high value on human dignity and autonomy and human freedom to an extent that I think few other philosophers talk about. He's unique in his explicit call for revolution. He thinks the most extreme action is the only one that has a chance of solving the problem. He's very well researched. He does a tremendous job in understanding the issues, understanding the psychological and the social aspects of technology. We don't see this typically in other social critics, other technological critics. He's not concerned about the theory or the metaphysics. He's concerned about the day-to-day problems, the effects on people, and he wants to see concrete actions taken that will mitigate that process. So the basic argument is this, that human beings evolved over the past 2 million years under very low-tech conditions. Modern society is radically different from those conditions in which humans spent 99% of their existence. This puts extreme stress on people and on nature. The accelerating rate of technological change is only going to make this worse. Some people think that the next 10 or 20 years are a particularly critical time to try to stop it, because if it makes it through the next 10 or 20 years, humans will be completely subjugated to the technological system. We'll either be genetically engineered or drugged or otherwise placated into accepting the inevitable, and then the system may well in fact have transcended its human base, and then it will be a completely new type of reality. We have technology advocates like Kurzweil who seem to think this is a good thing.
We're talking about a singularity where the exponential progression of technology will be so rapid and the powers of technology will be so great that we'll be multiplying our intelligence by merging with its non-biological counterpart 1 billion-fold by 2045. There's two different elements that go into capturing human intelligence in a machine. One is the hardware. You have to have computers that are powerful enough, 10 million billion calculations per second, but we'll have that for $1,000 in 2020. The more controversial issue is, will we have the software? All of that is progressing at an exponential pace, and I make the case that we will have exquisitely detailed models and simulations of all the regions of the brain within 20 years. This is not in my brain, it's in my pocket, but it makes me think faster and remember more things. And this will be the size of a blood cell, and I'll have millions of them inside my brain in the 2030s. So by 2045, according to my calculations, we will expand the intelligence of the human-machine civilization 1 billion-fold. That's a singularity. That is a profound transformation, all of the implications of which are hard to fathom.
Ray has a particular vision in mind, and he wants to get to the state of immortality. And he thinks if he can last another, I don't know what it is now, 20 or 30 or 40 years, then he will be able to live forever. So this is a very special case, all right? He's one of probably a handful of people in the world who thinks he can actually be immortal in his lifetime.
We actually don't have the ideas in our hand right at this minute to extend human life indefinitely, but we do have the ideas in our hands right now to extend our lives long enough to get to a point in time where we will have the ideas to live indefinitely. That's sort of my plan.
Outside the city, we thought we'd be able to more easily shield the babies from the most common disease vector, people. We kept out most anyone non-essential. Only immediate family and baby's therapists were allowed into the house. But one day, the nanny we hired to help care for the babies was careless and came to work sick. What she thought was a touch of food poisoning from the night before turned out to be a very serious digestive bug. And for the rest of the entire winter, Zach, Maxine, and Kuba were continually sick. They all lost a lot of weight, and Kuba was sent to the hospital for fluids due to dehydration. It's a dark time. Things start to get bleak. The babies need so much hands-on care that every day begins to feel like the one before it, and there's really no sleep. Just one more day in what I start to call the forever war. And because I've had to put everything else in my life on hold, I start to feel like there's nothing to look forward to. And I sink deeper. Then, in a brief moment when my wife and I actually get to speak to each other, she reminds me that this is our reality now, that we chose to go down the path and now we have a responsibility to the children. If anything, she adds, it's love that should motivate us to keep going, to take care of the babies. And I try not to think about it. I try to stay focused on the tasks. I count my blessings, steal sleep when I can, give into it. But I can't stop thinking about it. Because I know that things would be so much easier if we'd only given birth to just one baby. Go back to sleep. But I can't stop thinking about it. And then I find myself crying in the basement bathroom. I think about my mortality, how one day my children will be by my bed, stroking my forehead, trying to make me feel better, not afraid. I think of my father and imagine him holding me as a baby and his father before him. And I have no idea where I am. I've disappeared. There is no time.
So all through human history, we rationalized, oh, death, that's really a good thing. When in fact, it's a profound tragedy. It's a profound loss of identity and relationships and information and knowledge and creativity and everything that gives life meaning. So I think we can get beyond some of the stories and metaphors that have been giving human life meaning. And we can also try to overcome the sort of deathist rationalizations we've had.
What's remarkable about the ideas of the singularity is how structurally it's similar it is to a lot of movements, religious movements in the West. There's an apocalyptic moment of transformation. There's a promise of an eternal life. And that's a very strange conjunction because, of course, they're actually talking about things that, unlike most religions, are definitely real.
The religious function of AI is utterly selfish. I mean, if you can imagine, as my friend Ray Kurzweil does, that very soon, within our lifetimes, computers will be faster than brains and we'll be able to back ourselves up onto them or something like that, then you have this sort of fantasy of immortality, this fantasy of escaping the painful side of human nature in general. I mean, you have this fantasy, the same fantasy that Turing used, I think, to comfort himself just before his death. The problem with it is, I think Turing presented us with a moral and a poetic challenge, but not really a logical one. During World War II, he was a hero of Britain because he broke the Nazi secret code called Enigma that Nazi mathematicians had thought was unbreakable. What's extraordinary about this moment when Alan Turing thought of the famous Turing test is that he was being psychologically tortured to death by being changed into a woman. Now, this might sound like an unlikely claim, but it's historically true. It turns out Turing was gay, and it turns out that it wasn't legal to be gay at that time. And he ended up being forced to accept a bizarre quack treatment that was supposed to reverse his homosexuality. Now, you have to understand, back then, they didn't have the metaphor of the computer yet, so the metaphor was still the steam engine, and everything about the human psyche was supposed to involve pressures and balance and so forth. So the idea was you'd stuff Turing full of female sex hormones, and it would balance out his sexuality so he wouldn't be oversexed anymore. What happened is he started to develop breasts. He started to develop the female sexual characteristics that one would expect, and he became terribly depressed, and he committed suicide in a poetic way by turning himself into an anti-Eve. He injected cyanide into an apple and ate it in his lab. So this is the story, the very, very sad story of the demise of our greatest computer scientist. It was during this final phase in his life, when he was undergoing this trauma, that he invented the idea of artificial intelligence. And the notion was, well, if machines and people are equivalent, then if I could turn into a machine, I could escape this mortal, sexualized, tortured state of being and enter into this kind of perfect platonic state of being. I mean, I think if you could find a judge who wasn't able to distinguish a person from a computer, then you'd have to essentially give the computer equal moral standing. You'd have to give the computer equal rights. And you have to remember, this is the guy who defeated the Nazis, okay? So here he has incredible moral standing to say, you know, I defeated the Nazis who thought they were better than everybody else. You're defeating me because you think that your way of being is better than me. Well, I'm going to assert that none of you know anything about rights, and here, you know, screw all of you.
We need to retrain our brains to see differently than we ever saw before. We're seeing boundaries, we're not seeing images, and that's a very hard concept to kind of conceive, put it into the mind that would make any sense. I know this one person described that she could see her grandchildren in the swimming pool. And they said, did you really see them? Yeah, wait, I saw them. They were there. And I said, how'd you know? Well, I looked at them and I saw this flash in my Argus One, and I knew that was them. I said, well, what do you mean? Well, she did see them, but as far as an image goes, well, no.
What the system does is that the camera captures the video images from the outside world, and then convert it to an electrical signal. And then that signal is transmitted to the internal implant. You can see the electrode is also picking up the light object. Obviously, after you're implanted, the internal hardware cannot be changed, but the software we are improving all the time.
Yeah, it don't seem that strong. I have to agree with it. It seems real weak.
Shall I go to setting 2?
We will try that, yeah.
You see it?
It's up there, but it's
Since doing human trials, I think many of our subjects can find the doors for daily, activities. They, once they train, they can start to sort laundries. They will probably need a lot more electrodes to really improve their performance, and that right now, technically, it's very challenging.
Another thing I've been thinking about is how when I was 20 years old, I thought it might be a good idea to tell my girlfriend I hadn't fallen in love with her yet. She called me a robot. She said that only something without any feelings could say that.
I am used now to being thought of as a kind of species chauvinist. I actually make a distinction between technologies such as cochlear implants, retinal implants, artificial legs that will, really give medical applications to strengthen our bodies, and kind of a fundamental messing with our minds. But I teach at MIT, and I would say that at MIT, I am starting to think of mine as a minority position.
I don't think we're going to build robots that are going to take over from us, because we'd have to build robots that were really annoyed with us first, and we just won't go there. They'll get selected out. On the other hand, we may become a little more robotic over time, because we're starting to see neural implants. And I tell you, if I could have an implant which gave me Wi-Fi access to the internet, and I could Google things in my head and then spout them out of my mouth and know everything about mankind's knowledge, I'd have that in an instant.
I have a colleague, Rodney Brooks, who feels very strongly that thinking that, for example, my work that looks at humans relating to robots is an artifact of now, but will become irrelevant, essentially. I would putting words into his mouth, he's never said it quite that way, but will not be with the program because he sees humans and machines merging to the point that it will be kind of robots or us, that we won't know where the robots end and we begin, where we end and the robots begin.
The idea of the Turing test, of being able to tell whether something was a machine or a person and making that distinction, was maybe a little off the mark. I think what's really going to play out is how much we accept certain machines. We'll know in the back of our mind the whole time they're machines, but we might give them more and more of our emotional life. I see my children, I see my family, I see them all as machines from one intellectual point of view, but I treat them totally differently as an individual. I have two levels of interaction. So I think we can expect that same sort of dual interaction with machines. At one level, yes, we'll know they're machines. At another level, we may have certain affection for them.
When kids confront an engaging, interactive object that tries to relate to them, in the case of contemporary robotics, by looking them in the eye, remembering their name, making a gesture toward them, that child wants to take care of that object and have that object take care of them in return. The child wants to love the object and have the object love them in return. The Turing test goes out the window. Now, I'm one of the people who has some troubles with this scenario as it's unfolding, because I don't think the computers are worthy of some of the love, affection, and connection that we project onto them.
Many young people are not frightened by technology. They don't really think about it very much at all. They take for granted that it's good. That's essentially what they've always been told. But they take it for granted in a passive way.
I think we're certainly becoming used to finding increasingly more aspects of our lives in one way or another under the aegis of machines in a way that we're kind of, even if we're sort of, like we're getting used to being disturbed by it. Like, oh, well, what are you gonna do? So over here, it's like, you know, C-3PO and the talking doll and you know, anime and wow, cool robots. And then over here, our banking, our security systems, you know, our government decisions, what happens to our passport, all these things that are being increasingly automated with higher order algorithms. So you have algorithms that are increasingly making decisions that we are explicitly encouraged not even to recognize as being decision-making devices, because it's disturbing to realize how much of our advanced civilization is run by algorithms and machines.
Because my wife's parents live in another city, and mine spend half the year away, we set up a monitor and camera in the kids' playroom so they can regularly Skype with their grandparents. It's amazing to me how easily the kids accept seeing another person they know, a person they love, on the screen. It's only a matter of time before my daughter is searching my pockets for my iPhone. I have to make a point of it to leave it elsewhere when I go to play with them.
For the students and the soldiers of today, they embrace the technology from the very get-go. Their uptake of the information is so much quicker. We still train them physically and mentally and bring all that together, but what I've seen is that their uptake on this information and technology has led to, you know, a different type of training and a different type of force.
He's in a simulator right now. Hit knobs. Hit knobs.
Here we go.
Ooh, sniper.
They are in that age of the video game. The video game has led them into being keenly aware and acute to everything that happens on the screen. They find it, they know it. You know, it's their intent to do something with it. It's more of a thinking and you know, eyes on, and when I see it, I've got it.
Those little things are gonna, you know, basically move us further toward less and less manned aviators, especially with the prices of gas and whatnot. You know, find ways to cut costs by removing the pilot.
You're still going to need the infantry guys on the ground. You're still going to need the tank drivers. You're still going to need the artillery guys. But technology like what we're developing with UAVs is also being incorporated into those infantry and tank and artillery systems to kind of further remove the human element out of it.
I think instead of planes that are flown to carry people in, like there's gonna be no pilots. It's all gonna be unmanned. Somebody could pass out while they're flying. Pretty much anything could happen to them, and there goes the whole plane and all the people inside. I think it's better because a computer can't really pass out.
It's gonna help out a whole lot in the long run.
Definitely.
We'll see where the future takes us. I mean, I'm sure there's a plan in the works where you have you just program it out, hit enter, turn everything on, and just let the aircraft go for however long you program it to go, and it'll come back and shut itself down if you wanted to.
You nurture what you love what you nurture. As winter receded and spring arrived, the triplets were on the mend, but our schedule did not get any easier. The household was still a relentless clockwork, the kids developmentally behind, and for all intents and purposes, we were housebound and bleeding money. One thing was clear though, we had fallen in love with the babies. Through the sleepless months, the oceans of formula, the rivers of vomit and the mountains of laundry, we all had soldiered on, and like any good unit, we were bonded, a family.
There's never been a point in the existence of humanity when we had no technology. So the question is not high technology versus no technology. It's always a question of what's the appropriate level that we can live with and that the planet can live with. Our policy in my family is always to use the lowest level of technology possible. You know, so we probably will never be using cell phones until landlines don't exist. And, you know, that's our own little way of resisting. Now, in my debates with Kaczynski about how far back to go, he takes a very strong view. He thinks the ideal case is a nomadic, hunter-gatherer type society. We've built technology into our vision of ourselves. And so we have a very hard time relinquishing the technology because we feel like we're relinquishing a part of ourselves. But I think that's a very narrow and restricted view of what human beings are like. And this is why we need the long-term perspective. We need to look throughout time and look deeply into ourselves and understand what's really important about ourselves and about human existence and, you know, about the state of the environment and, you know, how we can live in a compassionate, symbiotic way. And all those things are opposed to high-tech existence. So it gets to very basic issues of, as you say, very basic issues of human values and human existence.
Dear Mr. Weider, thanks for your letter of March 24th. I doubt that Kevin Kelly and Ray Kurzweil can be considered serious thinkers on the subjects addressed in your interviews. I think it was after you interviewed Dr. Scribina that Dr. Scribina sent me some material in which certain technology experts commented, quote, "We're not saying that Ray Kurzweil is a crackpot, but," end quote, or words to that effect. Anyway, what Dr. Scribina sent me reinforced the impression that I already received, that Kurzweil was more of a showman than a serious commentator. Absent balancing commentary from a technologically sophisticated source that unquestionably can be taken seriously, I wouldn't even want my name to be connected with a film that features Ray Kurzweil and Kevin Kelly.
Everything's been deleted from the copy, but your name is on the file.
There's actually things that Ted Kaczynski and I agree on, and his Unabomber manifesto is actually surprisingly well written and cogently argued. He agrees that there are benefits to technology, and I agree that there are dangers to technology, and I think we both agree that they're sort of inexorably tied up with one another.
We could talk about Ted for a long time, but I was really interested in having a dialogue with him. I wanted to explore his extreme version of the world. He was looking at technology when it was a mad adolescent, and which is what I would describe the industrial age as. And I think that it's changed and will continue to change.
Kelly says, I believe that technology is divine, a good so great that, like intelligence in general, or life in general, we have to declare it a gift of God, even if particular machines or ideas or organisms are undesirable.
I really do believe that if the Montana library that he'd been going to had subscribed to Wired, we would have had one of his bombs. There's no doubt in my mind, because we were exactly everything that he was upset about.
Kelly says, I agree with you that technology is a system with its own agenda that is becoming more outside the control of humans. However, unlike you, I consider this a fine thing, like children who grow up to be outside their parents' control. There's no reply by Kaczynski.
You know, I have no idea whether he's crazy, insane, or just a bad seed. You know, someone whose moral compass has been, you know, completely wrecked. I have no idea because I've never had a conversation. I can only look at that manifesto, which was cranky but still had important points. So I decided I'd write him a letter to reply to him first.
Well, with somebody who's that addicted to technology, Ted is not going to waste his time. He wouldn't even bother responding, I'm sure. I think far worse criminals are running free in our society, so some larger sense of fairness, you know, may not be completely just. I mean, it's interesting to think if he was actually free, you know, and he would be known, he would, of course, be known who he was, and he would not be hiding anymore. He could publish what he wanted to say. He clearly wouldn't be sending mail bombs anymore. He wouldn't be a threat to the public other than through his ideas, which, of course, would continue to be a threat. So, but, yeah, you know, I've said before, I think, you know, at some point in the future, people will probably think of Kaczynski as a kind of a savior, someone who really advocated for what was in the best interest of humanity in the long run. And now we treat him as a criminal. But there have been cases in history where the criminals have turned out to be vindicated, and we know that. And I think he may be one of those cases. Sometime in the future, we may thank him for what he's written, for what he's done.
Dear Mr. Weider, I happened to hear from a third party that Dr. Skrbina was being interviewed by a filmmaker in New York, and it was left to me to infer that you were likely to be the filmmaker conducting the interview. It is perhaps worth mentioning that Dr. Skrbina has not informed me that he was giving an interview in which I was to be discussed. I would like to make clear that Dr. Skrbina is not authorized to explain or interpret my work. It is my considered opinion that Dr. Skrbina does not properly understand my ideas. Sincerely yours, Ted Kaczynski.
You could always find people in universities who would say, well, terrorism is bad, except these guys aren't really terrorists. Because when they murder civilians at random, they have such a good reason for doing it that we don't even care, and they're heroes. This sort of thing seems to me corrosive, tremendously destructive. I certainly don't want to try and suppress the facts, but I also don't want to dignify cowardly murderers by discussing them. The man who seriously injured me murdered several men, left a wonderful family, fatherless, young children fatherless, a young mother widowed. The murders committed in the most despicably cowardly way, with despicable, contemptible cowardice. The readiness with which the society is willing to dismiss such people as insane seems to me self-evidently insane. Any murderer who is good enough to carry out murders by guile and craft and technology has obviously got enough on the ball to be treated as a competent being and not as a vegetable. It also seems to me that the tendency to discuss the motives and the thought of murderers is profoundly destructive.
Come the summer, we're back in the city, and with great caution, we take the kids out more. We all make it to their first birthday, and with the advent of getting the kids to sleep through the night, I also begin to get more sleep. The endless night recedes, the dark thoughts get quieter, and the routine business of everyday life takes over.
They did not explain what I experienced. They probably could not explain what I experienced because they never went through the same experience. I can't blame them for that. Now, was I disappointed? A little, yeah. I was thinking I was going to see an image. I have a feeling they weren't certain as to what we're going to see or not going to see, and it does vary from person to person. What the electronic world hasn't really figured out is you're dealing with a biological world. They're quite separate. But as I worked through this whole procedure, I had to give thanks to my mind and myself for going through all this, for at least seeing something. Seeing something is better than nothing.
Do we need to evolve to be smarter in ways that computers can help us evolve in? I personally think not. I think we need to evolve in ways that will make us politically and socially and morally more able to work with each other.
If you sort of just believe in this kind of automatic improvement, that to me is kind of like a rejecting the acceptance of the unknown that's fundamental to being a scientist, or I think being a spiritual person or being an artist. I mean, the worst case scenario for me is a bunch of people who have no sense of mystery, who are living as if they were machines.
Well, most professing people of faith don't even think about theology very much, which is basically what we're having. We're having a theological discussion about technologies. But that questioning is a good step, I think, as you begin to say, well, what is this thing that has entered our lives in all places? What does it mean? Is it really good for us?
So anytime I get too utopian, I tend to try to, undermine that, or realize, look at it from another perspective, and vice versa. Every time I feel myself becoming too nostalgic or too mopey, I recognize all of the great things, or just the fascination of what's happening.
As I look forward to my daughter's generation and her children's generation, I think we're up to things that as human beings, we start with better equipment for than the artificial intelligences, who are not wedded to this planet. I mean, we're the ones who are wedded to this planet.
I don't know why I'm so optimistic, but I am.
We passed through another winter, and although still fearful of infection, we managed to get by unscathed. Words become sentences, standing becomes walking, infants become toddlers, baby care machines become parents. Somehow, just by putting one foot in front of the other, we've managed to get through it all. In some ways, it seems like it's gotten easier. It's more fun, more surprising. But really, it's actually much harder, more complicated, more time-consuming. Each of the kids has a distinct personality, and they all demand our attention, which of course is always limited. But my wife was right though. We chose this path, and no matter how chaotic or frustrating it is to have triplets, we're the ones who brought them here. And to them, here means life, right now. So more and more often, when I'm out walking with the kids, and the light is coming through the trees, and it's quiet on the street, and I hear their feet on the sidewalk, and I feel a hand in each one of my hands, the rest of the world, it just falls away, and I'm happy. And anyway, you can't restart it, you can't reboot it, you can't take the batteries out, you only get right now. But you get to work on it, to get close to it, to love it for a long time. And if we're lucky, maybe forever.